Today, we are talking to two of the songwriters behind some of the biggest worship songs of all time. I'm talking songs like What a Beautiful Name, Mighty to Save, Who You Say I Am, This I Believe, Goodness of God, and many other massive songs that have blessed the global church for decades. And so I want to give a warm welcome to Ben Fielding and Ruben Morgan, now part of Commons. It's good to have you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. I was joking beforehand that it's just really nice to have two of those rich, deep, intelligent accents in the same call. So, man, we're going to get a lot of gold. Well, guys, it's truly incredible to think what God has done through your lives to encourage his saints. And I actually went on Perplexity AI before we got on the call, and I asked Perplexity to sum up the total number of times that just those 5 songs that I listed were streamed or played in churches. It came back with this answer. In total, including streaming and church performances, these 5 songs have been played collectively well over 1 billion times globally. That's insane. And that means at the very least, you have helped people connect with their creator and express their praise to him over 1 billion times. How does that make you feel? Like, think about all the connections that people have been able to experience with God because of the songs you've written. How do you process that?
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wild thought when you start to try to break it down and make it tangible like that, because as a songwriter, as a creative, your dream is to be able to create something that helps somebody else, that brings a little bit more beauty into the world. And as a believer, when you add that level of going, well, God, like, what do you want to do with the thing that you've put on my life? You only have a dream about like somebody connecting with something that you've worked on, let alone those kind of numbers. And to me, it's the evidence that as much as we want to see good come from our lives and flow out of our lives, the God that we worship is even more interested in connecting with people. And so to me, that's the message of that story, is that you've got God who wants interaction with creation, with his people, and that billion or whatever it is God meeting with people, and that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it's kind of amazing, and it's hard to get your head around those sort of numbers. But I think realistically, the intent has always been to help people worship, to create spaces and moments where people connect with God. And that doesn't change whether it's the 100 people that get together on a Sunday morning in church or whatever number that is, or going beyond that many, many, many times around the world and in villages in Africa and cities in South America or whatever. It's the same God, and the heart is still the same, is that people connect with the Lord and grow deeper in their relationship with him. And so I guess at the end of the day, it's all about that, and it really should only be that.
Yeah. The numbers on the YouTube video or the Spotify, that's all irrelevant to you guys, because what's at the heart of all of it is just those are actually just numbers that hopefully are pointing to people having their heart touched by God and ministered to by God.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying is like, wow, when you tally up that sort of impact that these songs have had, it's so beautiful. And so again, I just want to honor you and thank you both for that.
Thank you. And on that, Alex, I mean, it's not just numbers, is it? Every one of those numbers actually tells a story, and it's an experience in someone's life and someone's connection with the Lord. And it truly is an honor and really humbling to kind of hear those sort of numbers. So
that's a great point, because like, who knows how that moment with the Lord changed the trajectory of that person's life. Like, maybe they were on their way to go commit some grievous sin that would have ruined their family, but the Lord used it to steer them, and it changed the whole trajectory of their life and then all the lives of the people they touched after them. Like, wow, till we get to heaven, we won't even be able to understand like the great spiderweb of what these songs have done. It's going to be amazing.
So true. Yeah.
We've kind of been doing this a little while, and it's amazing to actually see how a song really takes on its own life. And it starts to write its own story. And often people will go, what's the song story behind a particular song? And you can talk about how it was written and the heart behind it and the scripture that influenced the lyric. But I've always found like the coolest story that there is attached to a song are the stories that are written after. And you see the song take on its own life, and it reaches people in different ways. And like you said, there's so many different permutations that you couldn't even begin to imagine the kinds of ways in which the songs that have been written, to be written by some of the people even tuning into this podcast, will impact the community that the songwriter finds himself in, but also what God might want to do outside of that. And so we kind of got this responsibility on our part to take whatever God's put on our lives, the craft that he's given us, work really hard at it, But then there's also that element of you do it with open hands and you release it back and go, God, what do you want to do with it? And if we can do that well, then there's something actually quite liberating, I think, as creatives, because we're now not bound by those numbers. We're not going, well, if my song doesn't stream X, we're not bound by that. They can be helpful measures, but they're not the determinant of whether what we're doing is of value or not.
Yeah, I remember talking to Andy Rozier from Vertical Worship, and he said songs are lifeboats. And sometimes you write it just so that you and the Lord can row together for a little while. And other times he expands that lifeboat so that more people can get in. And so, like you said, it's whatever you want to do with it, Lord.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know we're going to be focusing a lot on what you're doing now, which is Commons. You guys just finished releasing the 3 or 4 part EP that equals up to a whole album. So we'll talk about that towards the end. But you both kind of, I guess, rose up through the ranks or grew into your role and your calling at Hillsong. And going all the way back, when you first started out, what was it like back in those days? Was it already starting to see some success, or was it still like humble beginnings? Did you each come into it at the same moment? So I don't know, just want to take us back a little bit.
Yeah, we came in at slightly different times, actually kind of different eras, really. So I came in at around 95, and Hillsong wasn't called Hillsong then, it was called Hills Christian Life Center. And they were meeting in an entertainment center in the hills, and they were packing that out. It's probably like 1,500 people per service, and it was a few services a day. And I had moved from Melbourne from a really small Baptist church into that environment, and was overwhelmed by it. But just, it was definitely a worshiping community already. There was a guy by the name of Jeff Bullock who basically wrote all the songs. And he's a hero, amazing songs, wrote Power of Your Love and songs like that. Darlene had just written Shout to the Lord at the time. So I think that song, it was the first time I think anything that was happening at Hills went beyond Australia with Shout to the Lord. And so I kind of came into that environment. It was one church location, and that's really just what it was. It had a conference, and it was a smallish conference. And over a period of 2 or 3 years, the thing just exploded. And we just saw this exponential type growth going throughout the world, really. And just hearing these stories of what was happening with the songs, it just sort of took on a life of its own. It was very, very unique and special time. And the whole thing, when was it? Until 2022 was a bit of a whirlwind, really. Like, it's just absolutely wild what God did. I mean, I think he was drawing people from everywhere, creatives. Ben and I, we came from Melbourne, people all over the place coming together with that gifting, I think, to bring a song to the church worldwide. And that was a community that was sort of entrusted to be the church environment where all of that thrived. And what a time it was. Just so special.
Yeah, I mean, so I arrived a few years after Rubes, and it was just this like incredible energy about the creativity of that community. And as somebody who was already writing songs and loved music, like I grew up in a little Baptist church in Melbourne as well, and fell in love with church music. It just captivated me as a kid. I'd walk out of church singing these like scripture and songs, and they taught me so much about who God was. And as soon as I picked up an instrument, I wanted to play the songs we were singing in church, and started serving in church as soon as they would let me. And so arriving at Hill, it was no different. I got there, I was blown away with the scale of it, obviously was so different. But I saw the same kind of hunger and passion and character in the creatives and in the worshiping community there. And it really was a fertile ground for songwriters, for worship leaders and musicians to be raised up and to be able to iron sharpens iron. I felt like my songwriting improved so quickly in that environment because I had all these amazing songwriters around to show ideas to, and we were collaborating together. And so I look back on that period and just go, man, that was like a really unique period in time where, as Rube said, I think God, he'd draw together all these people who, in lots of ways, they're still dear friends. To this day, I was just with a bunch of them in America last week. So we're all still working together. I think those connections become so deep, and you kind of see what God has done through those years. God was at work in those years, not just creating something that went externally, but he was doing something really beautiful internally in the lives of each of those people and in our relationships with one another, which I think have stood the test of time and I think will for many years to come.
Yeah, it's so cool. The collaboration really, like, so many great songs because of all that beautiful collaboration. And before I ask my next question, I got to lower myself because this next question is about pride. As you were part of this meteoric rise of Hillsong's influence and impact in the world, were there ever seasons, because both of you guys have Grammys and Dove Awards and all these things, right? Was there ever a moment where you were tempted to take credit for yourself, or where pride crept in and, like, look what I've done, or I must be so good, or anything like that that you want to speak into? Because I think that struggle of pride is something that all worship leaders wrestle with, but I can't imagine the temptation towards pride when you're technically the top of the top, right? So did that ever happen? And then if so, how did you wrestle that down, or what did the Lord have to do in your life to break that? And if not, cool, praise God. But
it's a good question, Alex. I think for me, at least, you're talking about a 25-year period and really like kind of unusual things happening. It's not normal. And I think especially for a worship leader and somebody who's writing worship songs, devotional songs to the Lord, it's quite an unusual thing to happen. And so you're on this personal journey, this discipleship journey yourself, this wrestle that goes on between you and the Lord, like I guess probably in any walk of life. I think some days you do it well and some days you don't. And some seasons, years, you're doing better than others. And sometimes you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing about community is that if I were to reflect on the different kind of seasons, I wouldn't have at the time said I was prideful or arrogant or like I was trying not to be. But I think if I reflect on some of the things that I remember saying that stand out to me as I would have said kind of in different rooms or ways that I was being in different rooms, I would say absolutely. Arrogant, prideful, definitely not showing humility. Thankfully, with the community that we're a part of, it's a very gracious group of people. Everybody gave each other a lot of room as far as personal growth and working through the seasons and all of that. And as Ben said, we're all still good friends and still do life together. So,
yeah, I just echo that, Rubes. The thing that's so challenging about pride and ego is we all wrestle with it. And I think if we don't think that we do, then we definitely do. And it's insidious, isn't it? And it comes in different ways. And I think, like Rube said, when I reflect back now, you can do it with a little bit more clarity than you do at the time, because I do think legitimately all the people that we were doing life with were doing their best to try to keep that in check. And I think being in a community, being planted in a church and serving alongside other people really helps with that, because, and maybe in part it's Australian culture, if you start to pop up a little bit, somebody will make sure you get pulled back in a line. But yeah, I think it's insidious because it doesn't always come out in a way where it's obvious that you are trying to elevate yourself above somebody else. But it can be in those little decisions that you make or comments, or where even just your mentality starts to focus less on the good that God is trying to do with what he's put on your life, and can be even more about just, is this song going to be successful? Is this song going to add something to my life, which is a distraction from the thing that you are ultimately called to do and the passion that God put on my life in the first place. And so along the way, like I found it, and I still find it really helpful to kind of just remind myself, whether it's songwriting or whether it's even coming into like lead worship, to go like, God has put me in this position and people wanting to connect with him. And so the reality is, like, if a song's doing its job, what people are connecting with is the goodness of God and the character of God. And it should result in worship of the Lord and not of me. People aren't worshiping the song. And I think if we are worshiping the music and we're worshiping the song, then we've been distracted from the objective. And so I find that quite humbling, because when somebody's like, wow, that song is amazing, I think what they're really saying, for the most part, not to say it's not important that we write good songs, but for the most part, what they're saying is, that really helped me in my faith. And so there's this depth of connection that people are having, not necessarily with the song, but with their creator. And that's what it's all about.
I think, just to reiterate, I think it doesn't matter who you are. If you're a believer, we're all on a journey of discipleship. And it doesn't matter who you are. You're not exempt from that. And I think it's really important to be about that.
Yeah, Ruben, when you shared that, when you look back, it's easy to see some of the seasons where you might have had more ego than others. And I think you're right. We're kind of blind to it in the moment. And I look
Mm.
back at some of the things that I said to my senior pastor, and I'm like, I can't believe that I thought that that was okay. Like, I
Right.
must have really been trying to prove myself, you know? And the
Right.
amazing thing through all that is to say, you know what? Yes, we're totally flawed and totally broken and every day doing our best. And usually our best is very poor. And yet God chooses to use us anyway. I think that's the crazy
Mm.
thing is like, even through
Right.
our ups and downs, like God is like, nope, I'm going to bless my church. I'm going to bless my people, even with your weird motives or whatever, because I love my church. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
reality is, I mean, that's all God's got to work with, imperfect people and imperfect songs. As much as we try and as much as we should work hard on the craft, our best efforts are only ever imperfect efforts of describing a perfect God. And so I think we've got to have some grace for one another, but some grace for ourselves as well to go, it is a journey. Like we're all on a trajectory. Hopefully, our trajectory is upwards towards becoming more and more Christ like. And so that even I'm encouraged by hearing like the humility to reflect and to go back and go, yeah, well, I didn't get that right. Maybe we need to apologize to people. Maybe we need to make adjustments. But I think God can work with that. And we look at the life of King David. I mean, he's the perfect example for songwriters and creatives. But his life was certainly not perfect. But he had a heart that was after God's own. It was his contrition that attracted and continued to attract the blessing of God. And so I kind of think we can take some comfort from that, I think, as creatives to go, we don't have to have it all lined up. And in fact, there's maybe something beautiful about recognizing that we never will. But as long as we're trajecting in the right direction, I think God can work with that.
Mm.
It's
You
very good.
mentioned, Ben, you said that's the wrong way to view a song earlier, a few minutes ago, regarding, I hope this gets a lot of views or whatever. What is the right way
Yeah.
to view a song? If you're feeling stuck, mediocre, or inadequate in your ministry, if you know there must be a better way of doing things, but you're not sure how, if you're looking for fresh inspiration and new ideas that will improve your ministry and give you a team that you're proud of leading, then I invite you to join me and over 1,400 worship leaders from all over the world who are growing inside the Worship Ministry Training Academy. In the Academy, you'll find over a dozen practical courses that will give you the confidence and skill that you need to lead with excellence. Our 20 done-for-you admin systems will save you time, streamline your ministry, and reduce the weekly stress, headaches, and chaos of leading a team. I'm talking about things like a completely done-for-you audition process and 20 other time-saving tools just as useful as that. During our weekly Monday huddles, you'll gain perspective and encouragement on the actual problems you're facing in your ministry. You'll also hear from some of your favorite worship leaders right inside the Academy. Past guests include Matt Redman, Phil Wickham, Christian Stanfield, Charity Gale, and many others. Our team devotions will help your team grow spiritually, and our musician training resources will help them improve musically. The best part is it's completely free to try for 15 days. Yes, free. And if you decide to sign up, the Academy is by far the most affordable online worship school out there. Our C3 format is proven to get you results because you get courses, coaching, and community. The courses teach you what to do, the coaches help you apply it to your specific situation, and the community helps you stay accountable and encouraged as you take the right steps to improve the ministry God has called you to. Join thousands of other worship leaders like Alicia and Jaime, who both say the Academy has completely transformed their ministry. I hope you'll start your free trial today, take the guesswork out of building a thriving worship ministry, go to worshipministrytraining.com and click that big red button, and I hope to see you this week inside the Academy. What is the right way to view a song?
Yeah, it's so hard because I think we're so attracted to tangible measures of whether something is meaningful or not, or whether it's valuable or not. And it can be really hard because it's a vulnerable thing to create something out of your own experience. Your whole life gets poured out, even if it's in a 3-minute song, because your whole life experiences is informing why you wanted to write that in that way, why you put that musical color to it. So it really is this vulnerable process that you then present to the world. And I've said before, like sometimes songwriting feels like a PhD in disappointment and rejection because you're putting out your vulnerable ideas and they don't always resonate the way that you expected that they would, whether that's in a co-write, a collaborative kind of environment, or whether it's actually a song you've released going, I think this is something really special, and it doesn't receive the kind of lean in that you thought it would. It is a balance, isn't it? Because I think we want to be aware of, particularly if we're creating and we're releasing music for people to be able to connect with, we want to know whether it's resonating or not. There's even a humility about kind of, preferably before we've released the song, but going, is this connecting with people? But we just got to have like a level of, maybe it's maturity, or maybe it's just a bigger picture of going, not everything that we create is going to resonate in a way that looks like large numbers of streaming or whatever, but it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. And I think a lot of songwriters would say that the song that meant the most to them maybe isn't even the song that really resonated with their audience in the most significant way, but that God's there in the whole process. And I think as writers, if we can kind of have that perspective, that one of the most beautiful things that we get to do is actually go and dig into the character of God. And there's something that's happening in our own lives as we're in that creative process, which if I never released the song is still entirely meaningful. And then I think right all the way through the process, it's that continual recalibrating of going like, how do I define value, and how do I make sure I'm not lured into this measure of success that we don't really have a biblical framework for, because there's nothing in the New Testament about good streaming numbers, or you don't really see a lot of discussion at all about measures of success. So it's really something that I think we have borrowed from our culture. And I think we've just got to be careful that we don't let that become the determinant of what is valuable and important in the eyes of God.
So if I understand you correctly, the purpose of a song is to dig into the character of God. The purpose of a song is an opportunity for us to dig deeper into the character of God. You said something like that. Does that sound right to either of you? What's the right mindset we should carry in terms of songwriting?
Let me try to do a better job there. So I think digging as a writer, like that process of discovery, like of revelation of who God is, that's part of the process, which is one of my favorite parts of being a songwriter. But then the purpose of the song then, I think, particularly a song for church worship, is that then it does its job in being a gift to worship leaders who are trying to gather a body of people to sing. So it should be able to unify people and lift the eyes of the people to who the Lord is. And then I think that a song has a really important role to play in our own personal devotion. So a good worship song, you can put it on in the car, and straight away it helps you fix your attention, not just on what's happening in your immediate circumstances, but on who God is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question of purpose around song is crucial, and it's also one in a co-writing session that is a good thing to discuss. Like, what are we going for here? Like, what is the end goal? And that can change. If my daughter shows me a song that she's written, her purpose may be very different, and especially in that moment, to what potentially Ben or I might be going for when it comes to a song for the church or our particular congregation, or something that would go broader. And so I think it can change, and I think that's what makes the whole thing fun. So I think when it comes to songs for church, I think they should be rich in theology, deeply rich in theology. I think we should be singing theology in church. I think that they need to be singable. I think that's really important and something that we're committed to. And you should want to sing them. They should inspire you, and you should be wanting to do that song again, do that song at the start of the service, do it at the end. That's the goal as well. And week in, week out as well. I think songs for church, there's a definite creative purpose to them, and God seems to use those songs in incredible and grand ways. And that's humbling, even that.
Yeah, something I didn't send to you guys in advance, but I was preparing for the interview, and I thought, how do you guys handle the weight of the global church using your lyrics as prayers? And what sort of filter do you run your lyrics through to make sure you're helping the widest group of people possible without being too shallow? You guys have probably a very delicate balance there. So how do you handle all that, the lyrics and the theology of the songs?
I think we've always been very committed to trying to write around Scripture. That's the easiest way to test your lyrics, is to go, what is the biblical basis for that line? And then to be really committed to the responsibility that if we are putting theology and words in the mouth of the church, is it true? And we've probably both learnt the hard way, even when you've agitated and you've tried to kind of test the lyrics and to hold them to that sort of biblical litmus test. you still sometimes will not get it right, or there's maybe not a clarity, or there's an ambiguity around what you meant. And so when a song goes broadly, you definitely get that feedback from different parts of the church or blogs or whatever. And I actually think it's quite helpful because the Spirit's not always kind, but I think it's helpful that as a songwriter to go, yeah, actually, it's a reminder that I want to make sure that what I'm writing is received in the way that I intended it to be received, and that it's not creating distortion for people around the way they see God, but it's helping them lean towards truth. And so I think starting with scripture is imperative, and then actually having it some sort of process, whether it's a pastor at your church, whether it's someone that you respect who maybe has studied a bit of theology, just having people in your world that you can say, hey, I've written this lyric, what do you think? And actually be receptive to the feedback is really, really helpful.
Yeah. Just to add to that slightly, I think we've always sort of tried to stay away from anything really controversial in songs as well. So if the lines are kind of broad and just staying well within the lines, I think that's probably not a bad rule of thumb when it comes to theology and songs, because they end up reaching a lot of people with a lot of different niche theologies. And I think you just want to stay away from all kinds and just keep it right in the middle. Yeah.
You're like, let's not sing about the doctrine of what is the Catholic thing where the bread turns into substantiation,
yeah.
right? It's like, you're like, let's avoid that one and let's sing more generally about Christ returning or whatever.
On that point, I think that there's a way to still, because I do believe that the church should sing a really rich and balanced theology. And so there's areas of theology that I think we can be prone to avoid because they feel difficult or they feel controversial. We actually did write a song called Remember Christ. It's sort of around communion, but we did it in a way where hopefully it's unifying because we're just drawing on the scriptures, the communion scriptures, so that you could sing that, I think, no matter what your particular persuasion was or doctrine was around the sacraments. And I think that as songwriters, we can have that as an objective too, is can we write this in a way where everybody actually could sing it, even if they're looking at it from a slightly different angle?
Yeah, and I think if we're also focusing on writing for our own particular churches, we can be a little more narrow. Not every song is going to go broad. We can say this group of people needs to sing about this narrow niche topic of theology, and that's what our church needs, and that's okay. But it just knowing that it's going to limit the global reach or whatever.
Yeah.
Not that most of us have a global reach, unlike you guys. But let me ask you guys this question. So Ruben mentioned some core qualities of a perfect worship song. You said it's got rich theology, it's singable, and you want to sing it. How else would you answer the question, describe the attributes of a perfect worship song? What is a perfect worship song to you guys? Besides what a beautiful name.
Yeah, geez. Well, I mean, I would start by saying there's no such thing, obviously. We only ever sort of scratching the surface, I think. But one of the things that we often talk about, and we're talking specifically about songs for the church to sing, which is what we're super passionate about, is that it can be really hard in the era that we live in where a lot of the new music that we're discovering through TikTok or Instagram or socials. And so our algorithm was throwing us these amazing things where you'll see a song in a big room and there's so much energy around it. And you look and you see it and you go, I want to sing that song in my church. And it's almost like you're drawn to the momentum of that moment. And then there's a disconnect potentially between what works in that environment and what works when you stand up at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning with 50 people who have just got out of bed and are standing there going, what are we doing here? And so I think as worship pastors and worship leaders, we've got that extra filter that we've got to apply. And particularly when we're being presented with so much incredible music, but we've got to go, is this song that I'm hearing and I'm really compelled by, is it compelling in the right ways that are actually going to help me do what I'm meant to do this weekend in church? So if I took it through that lens, then I think there's questions like, is the theology really rich? Is it true? Is it stable? Is it orthodox? Has it been tested? Does it sound scriptural? That's really important. Musically, is it achievable? And I think we've got to look at the people that we have on our team at church and go, can we not necessarily even replicate the recorded version, but can we do that song in a way that's going to work, that's actually going to be beautiful, that's going to help people worship and not distract our church. And then look and go, like, is this song singable? And so I don't think that necessarily that means it's got to be boring or like simplistic, because you can hear a song that's like really quite elaborate, but it's so hooky and catchy that you can sing it the second time that you've heard it. But I think that's a really important test too, to go, does it just sound good because the person that sung it is an amazing vocalist? Or would it sound good if I put that in a service and my church sung it back to me? And I think that's a really important test as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think then does it create a sense of worship? I think that there's a bit of a mystery to worship songs as well. And you can't change the fact that we are actually writing songs that help people connect with God. And so there's that creative element and that spirit-inspired element that I think people need to be aware of as well. Just because we like a song, or if we're writing, we like the sound of a melody, it doesn't necessarily make it a good worship song, or a church congregational worship song. It's kind of its own thing. And I think it's maybe important to differentiate even, is that we're not just trying to write a clever song or a cool song. This is a song for church that helps people experience the presence of God and lean into Him. And it's a way for people to worship.
Speaking of songwriting, love your advice or tips on this. Like, what is the key to a great chorus? What is that thing that just makes a chorus awesome for a church service? Any thoughts?
I think that there's an immediacy, particularly when we're talking about what will work in church and continue to work in church. It's this sort of balance between going, like, it's got to be familiar and predictable. Like, I think you should be able to almost sing the next line before even if you've never heard it before. There's that degree of like, it's drawing you on a journey, and it's an easy journey to walk. But then the thing that makes writing music for church so hard is that, like, you've got that to hold in tension with the fact it's also got to be interesting, and it's got to have enough color that you feel like you can sing it over and over again and it doesn't tire. And that really, I think, is where the challenge is. And I think there's sort of really no way there's not a formula. I think we have to fill our lives with revelation and to keep working really hard on the craft, because we don't need somebody to write "How Great Is Our God" again. That song's been written. But I do think we've got a mandate to keep writing a new song, so our hymn book doesn't get stuck in a period of time, that there's always new color and there's new perspective, because that draws us to different aspects of who God is, to see Him from the many different angles that we could. And so, yeah, I think that we've got the responsibility to keep digging, but then also to come away from our sessions and go, like, which idea actually really do I want to listen to over and over again? Because I think if, as writers, we want to hear back a chorus over and over again and it's doing something in us, then there's a chance that it might do that in our churches.
Do you think everybody should write for their church? There's a lot of worship songs out there. There's not even enough song slots in our services to put all the new worship songs in there. Should we each be writing for our own church? Yes or no? Why or why not?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. It's something that we talk about as part of our church at the moment, our little community, and we don't have an answer for it, really. I think a lot of churches have done what Hillsong did. That's sort of become a bit of a thing, and that can be good, but I think that's not for everybody. And it brings its own challenges as well. So I think it's definitely something to keep talking about.
Well, I think there's something great about stewarding the potential gifts in your team. And if you've got people that are passionate about writing songs, then encouraging those people to get together and collaborate and see what comes out, I think that's a great thing to do. But then there's another step that's going, should we be singing any of those songs? Are they actually going to help our meetings? Because, and they might, and that would be amazing. Like, so the songs that were coming out of the heart of that team, you did one of them in church and it really helped lift the meeting and it helped, everybody was singing along and it was beautiful, then you do it again. But I think it's also good to have that perspective of going, if the songs just aren't quite there yet, then let's not force them to be carrying a weight that maybe they can't carry. And then the next step is to go, okay, well, do we need to record them and do we need to put an album out? And I think that has become a lot more commonplace because in part the barrier to entry is so much lower. It's easier to record music these days than it was 20, 30 years ago. But I think that that's still really an important question to go, well, what are we trying to do there? And it might just be to capture something that's happening on a weekend so people can go away and listen to the songs that they've been singing. And that's great. I just think we've got to be careful too that we don't get distracted by going something that was just meant to be about our local community coming together to sing has now become this sort of endeavor towards creating like a music label. Those two things are quite different in my view. And I think, not to say that you can't do it, I just think they're important questions to ask and to wrestle with as church leadership.
I love that. I think that's really wise, because we don't want to do like anything in worship. We don't want to distract people from connecting with God. And if our poor songwriting is actually hindering people from connecting with God, then we should probably just sing your guys' songs instead. You know what I mean? I think that's actually really wise.
And vice versa. We've spent years and years standing up in church and leading a new song that we thought was going to light the room up, and it just falls flat. And you go, well, okay, do we do it again? And you might give it a second run. And if it's really hard work, then at some point you've just got to go, that's just not the song. And have this belief, this big perspective of going, God doesn't necessarily give the gift of a song, but he gives the gift to create songs. And so we don't need to focus on that one particular song. Maybe that's not the one, but just lean back into the gift that God's put on your life and keep digging and see what other gold comes up.
I'd love to ask one more songwriting question, and then I'd love to just real briefly touch on just what the Lord taught you and showed you through that exit period from Hillsong during all the turmoil. I don't want to dig up drama or cause division or anything, but I just want to see what the Lord showed you, because a lot of people go through crappy church situations. So,
for sure.
But one question that I struggle with is, how do you know a song is done? Because you can endlessly tweak. Like, I even have a song right now. I love everything about it, but I'm like, is there a better line in that bridge that could just take it that 2% higher, even though my church is already worshiping with it and loves it? Like, you can endlessly tweak. So how do you know that a song is done and you should just let it go? Ruben.
I don't think there's an easy answer to that. Every song's different. And I'm with you. You could endlessly tweak. I think you can take a song too far. So you rewrite it out of where the sort of the beauty was and where the kind of that feeling of spontaneity and whatever the essence of that song was can get lost in rewrites. So you have to be really careful. I think that's why co-writing is so good, is you have sort of built-in accountability in the whole thing as well. So
stepping back from a song for a moment can be really helpful too. So I probably these days don't keep going digging on a song unless there's something about it that really moves me. And if I go, there's something special about this song, then you start dialing up the crafting of that song and going, does every line hit me? And sometimes as a writer, you'll change a line, hopefully for the better, and then all of a sudden other lyrics start to look lackluster because they're not quite as, they don't hit in the same way. And so sometimes you get this feeling that the work you're doing is actually elevating the song and everything now has to get better to try to like lift to that standard. But I think when we realize that what we're doing is actually doing the opposite, where you're changing things and it just still feels like it's making it more incongruent, it's probably a good time to either pause, step back from it, or to involve another writer, collaborate and get some help and get some perspective from somebody else.
That's good.
yes.
So just briefly touching on Hillsong and just how things unfolded towards those later years. Ruben, you said you were there for 25 years. And so that must have been incredibly complex and painful and confusing, not just for you, but everyone watching and the whole situation. And as you've exited that season over the last couple of years and processed it, hopefully, prayerfully, I'm sure there's a lot of pain and hurt. I still carry a lot of hurt from things that happened in my past at different ministries, but what were some of the key lessons that God taught each of you that you feel like would be helpful for the people listening?
I think, what you said there is really good, that I think we all go through moments in our faith life and our spiritual journey and our doing that in community. There's moments where they feel incredibly difficult, and they're moments that can kind of open up wounds in our lives if we don't pay attention to them and we don't take the time to actually sit with them and process, and that they can cause ongoing damage. And one of the things that I was really committed to and my family was to make sure that we didn't want to carry a sense of hurt and bitterness or anything like that from that season. We wanted to be grateful for the things that we needed to be grateful for, We wanted to recognize where things had fallen over in a way that they shouldn't have and go, what can we learn from that so that we don't see that happen again? And then ultimately to kind of have this sense of belief that it was God who was doing good things along the way. He was working all things together for his good the whole way through those years, and that it's him that continues to do so. I think when you're in an environment like that, where there's this incredible momentum, you can begin to believe that the reason that God's at work in your life is because you were a part of something that was successful. And the individual sense of God's gifting and anointing or whatever on your life takes this really relegated place. And so for me, one of the things I had to journey through was actually going and discovering that while it's really amazing to be a part of something that's incredible and beautiful and a creative sort of juggernaut, that the gift, if it's good, is coming from God. He's the only giver of all good gifts. And on the other side of that season of my life, I've continued to see God at work, and it feels as rich. The collaborative part of what I'm doing is as rich. And it's really been actually a really beautiful reminder of the fact that that gifting and that opportunity to create and to serve God in that way comes from him, and it doesn't come from anywhere else.
That's beautiful.
It's good. There's so much to say around this topic, Alex, and obviously it's been a big part of my life and my family. Raised my family as part of Hillsong Church, and we actually planted churches, my wife and I, in England that were Hillsong churches. So we've definitely been in that and done the tours and the songs, and we've really built a lot of that alongside many people. So it's obviously like a huge part of our lives. But I think that reflecting on that time, it was like lockdown and then things changed. What do you do about things that you can't control? And there was so much in that season that we couldn't control and that kind of happened. There's obviously been a lot of conversation and a lot of things that have been shared about what happened with Hillsong. So we don't need to talk about that here. But I think that personally and as a family, you just have to ask yourself, well, what can we control? What do we believe here? What's important to us here? And you have to make your own decisions, and you have to make sure that you protect your own soul and your own relationship with God, and you protect your family, and you keep going. You keep following the Lord. You keep going after what he's put on your life. And that's easy to say, but it is a huge thing to go through. And obviously you touched on it just before, Alex, is that you've got experiences like that in your past as well. So I feel like this is a shared experience for Christians, for people who have been part of church life, is we have these moments of change that we have to navigate. Seasons change. What can you do about the natural seasons changing? Nothing. You come out of winter into spring. What did we do about that? You can't do anything about it. You just have to thank God for the new and what he's about to do, and for the day we're living in right now. And we're in this time where we're fully embracing the day and fully embracing the new season. And I think these are the best times to be alive, and very exciting times ahead. Really excited about what is happening with the Commons and the new music that's coming. And I can't wait for you to hear more of it, Alex.
Let's
really
talk about it. Tell us about the project. Why is it called Commons? Why the X's? What about your new albums that you just released? What are you loving about those albums, and what are your hopes for the project?
Well, yeah, we decided on the name Commons. It's like a common space, like in parts of the world, like the UK, like it's literally like common land in the middle of like a built-up area that belongs to sort of no one. It's a space for everybody to come and exist and be. And so we love that picture. And then we use the X's, like, which represents Christ. So it's Christ in common. That's the thing that unifies us as worshipers, and certainly everybody who's collaborating on the Commons. And the Commons exists to inspire worship, to help the church sing, to help people worship. And so every song kind of goes through that filter. We're trying to write songs that are a worship leader's best friend, that are going to help what we're doing on a weekly basis. And so we're really decided about wanting to start with new songs. So that this first project is 11 of the 12 songs are brand new songs. And we got a really deep commitment to continuing to write new songs and to bring new songs through, find and bring through new songwriters. And then the second project we're about to release, called it's Live in Manila Project, is a collection of some of the new Common songs and then some of the songs that Ruben and I have written through the years. And that is shaping up to be a really exciting project as well.
Fun. Yeah, so the first song for that comes out this Friday, Alex, so which is The Creed, this I believe, and then on from there, a couple of weeks later, I think we're releasing Still, and then the album comes out, I think it's early October. Yeah, cool. It's happening.
I'm going to grab all the links and share them everywhere and make sure everybody hears, because I love your guys' commitment to serving worship leaders who are looking for great songs for their churches. That seems to be what you want to do and what God has gifted you to do. So I love that you're just leaning in hard on that. That's so good. Do you guys have any final words of encouragement for the worship leaders, both live and those who will listen after or watch after the fact?
Yeah, my parting encouragement would just be to keep going. Don't throw away your confidence. Don't lose sight of why it is that you got into this in the first place. Whether it's a moment where you can kind of look back and go, I remember when I first was inspired by hearing a worship song, or where God did something in my life through music. Go back to that place and kind of go, oh yeah, what did that unlock in you? And then what's God done along the way? And I think sometimes when we step back and we look at the fact that he's actually been writing this story all along, and you can see him weaving the good in our lives, let that be an encouragement to you that he's going to continue to do that. Even if you're in a season that might feel a bit discouraging, or you might be feeling a little bit tired, that happens to all of us. You might be a writer, you might feel like you've got a bit of writer's block, or it feels just really hard at the moment. Give yourself a bit of grace, but just remember that God is at work in your life, that he is weaving a really good story together, and lean into that.
I would just say, don't allow your courage to be robbed from you. You might have a day where you feel like you're depleted of any sense of confidence or anything like that. But I would say, just continue to encourage yourself in the Lord and find that inner strength and that inner place. Just because you have a bad day doesn't mean you need to have a bad week or a bad month. And I would just say, keep going. And don't give up, but just keep your confidence, keep your courage.
That's so good. The overarching theme I keep hearing is God is the God of the seasons. He walks with us through the seasons, and he's doing a beautiful thing through all of it. So I love it. Thank you guys both. Ruben, I know you got to bounce to an appointment, but Ben, do you have time for 2 Academy student questions about songwriting?
For sure. Let's do it.
If you're feeling stuck, mediocre, or inadequate in your ministry, if you know there must be a better way of doing things, but you're not sure how, if you're looking for fresh inspiration and new ideas that will improve your ministry and give you a team that you're proud of leading, then I invite you to join me and over 1,400 worship leaders from all over the world who are growing inside the Worship Ministry Training Academy. Our C3 format is proven to get you results because you get courses, coaching, and community. The courses teach you what to do, the coaches help you apply it to your specific situation, and the community helps you stay accountable and encouraged as you take the right steps to improve the ministry God has called you to. Get access to over a dozen practical courses, 20 time-saving templates, done-for-you team discipleship material, and live expert interviews with guests like Matt Redman, Christian Stanfill, Charity Gale, and others. The best part is it's completely free to try for 15 days, yes, free. And if you decide to sign up, the Academy is by far the most affordable online worship school that there is out there. Join thousands of other worship leaders like Alicia and Jaime, who both say the Academy has completely transformed their ministry. I hope you'll start your free trial today, take the guesswork out of building a thriving worship ministry, and get a proven game plan to success. Go to worshipministrytraining.com and click that big red button, and I hope to see you inside the Academy this week.